Well, again, hello everyone, and welcome to today's session. Very excited that we have NexInfo Solution to present streamline and simplify your audit process using Oracle Risk Management Cloud. And let me just introduce you to SRO. For those of you who is not familiar with our group, let me do a quick introduction. The Southwest U.S. Regional Oracle Application Technology User Group was formed in Southern California back in 1996. And this is by a group of Oracle application users to share their information to meet the specialized needs of Oracle application professionals, and also to provide them a regional forum to train, evaluate, and network with peers throughout all the industry. We, the SRO group for Oracle customers, Oracle certified business partners, and third-party vendors. We represent Oracle EBS, Oracle Fusion, Hyperion software users. SRO joined the network of virtual events to provide the Oracle community a good set of education to advance the effective utilization of Oracle products and promote free interchange of information and ideas virtually during especially this pandemic. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You will have the opportunity to submit your questions on the text question box on your right-hand side, on your question panel, on the control panel. And you can submit it anytime during the presentation, and we will collect them and address them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome our presenter, Rahul. Take it away.
Thank you, Melody. So uh, today I'm joined with Patrick Palmer from Oracle. So we are going to start with introducing NexInfo to everybody. So NexInfo is a consulting company for a niche market segment. NexInfo was founded in 1999, and we have been in business for 22 years with a wealth of knowledge and experience in consulting services such as business process design, software implementations, managed services, staff augmentations, SaaS solutions, and business analytics. NexInfo ensures that its clients get highest value in their efforts to improve their business processes and return on investment. Our domain expertise is in enterprise resource planning, product lifecycle management, integrated business planning, EPM, CRM, HCM, cloud, and security solutions. Recently, as well, we added our higher education solutions as part of our domain expertise as well. NexInfo brings a blend of both software consulting and knowledge in business processes to table at the heart of it. We are on our background, we are headquartered here in Santa Ana, California, and we have offices in US, Europe, and Asia. We are a certified premier partner of Oracle, but we also offer services in other areas like Microsoft, SAP, Vanguard, and RFGen. All our financials and functional and technical consultants are certified and accredited by the respective compliance and evaluation body. We are also proud to highlight that we involve our consultants in continuous learning and development programs from time to time, wherein they renew their certificate at regular renewal periods and are up to date with the current trends, changes, and security appetite. NexInfo, just to go over awards and such, NexInfo has also been known and recognized by many compliance firms such as Gartner and other industry forums. We have been very active in delivering webinars and presentations. Our success stories have had a greater reach, and we have received many accolades from Silicon Review, CIO Review, Inc. 500, and many more. We are an ISO 9001 and ISO 2700 certified company, and we carry out our delivery that follows the principles and policies of high standards. So just giving a background of myself, I'm Rahul Fatak. I'm the Oracle ERP and Cloud Practice Lead here at NexInfo. I have 20 plus years of industry experience and specializes in business management, business transformation, process and solution design, program management, and change management. I have an extensive experience in ERP, both in the finance and supply chain domains, as well as human capital management. I'm Oracle Certified Specialist with experience in leading ERP transformation engagements, recommending industry best practices to our customers, and implementing business optimization initiatives for enterprise customers across various industry domains. And I'm joined by Patrick, who's going to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session. I'm really excited to be here and be able to speak to you regarding the risk management applications that are available in the cloud. Just a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Patrick Palmer. I am a senior cloud manager here at Oracle Consulting. Been here for over 6 years now. My background is primarily 20 plus years as either an accountant or internal auditor. Been certified professional as well as Rahul is. My master's and BBA in accounting. So just really excited to be here and share my experience and what we've seen from an implementation perspective with you guys.
Thanks, Patrick. So this is going to be agenda today. So we did our introductions. So next we are going to introduce risk management, and we are going to introduce the risk management controls and basic concepts, how risk management is optimized security by design, how it also offers to automate segregation of duties, allowing controls for compliance reporting, how you can digitize user access certification workflows, how risk management continuously provides monitoring of user security, changes to any critical configurations on the system, and also allows you to continue to monitor financial transactions. It also allows you to digitize audit and SOX compliance workflows, and also digitize risk and continuity. Then we will give a walkthrough of the SOD, or separations of duty analysis, and then we will end the webinar with some implementation considerations for risk management. So as Melody said earlier, if you have any questions, please submit those using the questions options on the GoToWebinar panel. That way, me and Patrick will be seeing those and answering them in the webinar, or we will answer those in the Q&A sessions in the end. So let me give a brief introduction how risk management is built and the functionality around it. So risk management is a built-in product for ERP and HCM cloud. It sits on the single platform, so it shares the platform with other cloud products such as Oracle Financials, Oracle Procurement Cloud, HCM Cloud, and Project Portfolio Management Cloud. Since it sits on the same platform and shares the same universe, it can continually monitor security, transactions, and configuration analysis, and audit and compliance workflows for all these financial HCM and PPM modules. Because again, it sits on the same platform, it also allows you to have a common user experience and interface. It allows us to use a common user security data model, application administration with the Oracle ERP products, as well as it receives updates and patches when the other Oracle ERP products receive those patches. It also uses a common extensibility tools like the Page Composer and Flex Fields with the Oracle ERP products.
Okay, thank you. And before we jump into the applications, I always like to, walk through sort of a use case from a statistical point of view, where, currently in today's market, what we found when we're engaging with most customers interested in why they need a risk management application automation within their organization. These statistics that you guys are seeing here, these percentages are fairly alarming, as you can see. And this is taken from a more recent data, the GRC maturity survey, where we're saying 25% of organizations that we've engaged out there are somewhat siloed, no real standardization, ad hoc or manual processes, using spreadsheets to perform a lot of their assessments, their SOD analysis, transactional analysis, and so forth. Where the middle one there is pretty significant, where we're saying 67% of organizations out there that we've engaged who are largely siloed, with some standardization, spreadsheets again, some org-based solutions and so forth. But notice on the right there, only 8% of those organizations have really no silos, cross-org standardization. So they're pretty much mature in their process when you were talking about 8%. But what's alarming there is that 67% of these organizations largely siloed, especially when you're talking about global organizations where you have multiple business units. You want that visibility across the board and not necessarily your users or your operating units working in silos. To put it a little more bluntly, we're seeing these translate to cost, right? Impacting cost for our clients, where a lot of them, 45% increase adverse ICFR audit opinions, adverse audit results, where we're also noticing some cash leakage, which are really nothing more than profit reduction due to errors and fraud. We're also seeing penalty exposure, where 1 in 8 managers and 1 in 15 executives display risky behaviors. Risk awareness, this is a big one, where over 50% of mid-managers don't really understand their business risk inherent to their roles and so forth. There hasn't been that real risk assessment on their roles for them to understand what those risks are and where those controls are needed. As a result, lawsuit exposures are prominent, where 60% of accounting lawsuits involve control weaknesses and so forth. But these again are current issues, trends that we're seeing throughout our implementation, not only continuing from the on-prem world, but now more carried over into the cloud environments as well. So when we talk about risk management, and particularly Risk Cloud for Oracle, we're really looking at 3 applications within the risk management suite that perform 3 distinct functions, right? The bottom layer there of this pyramid that you're seeing has to do with advanced access controls, or AAC for short, where it's really all about securing your role design, securing role assignments, and so forth. So it's not where to the point where you have your first line of defense around sensitive access, for example, but how do you now certify that access on a periodic basis? The middle layer of this pyramid that you guys are seeing has to do with advanced financial controls, or AFC for short, where now you're applying a compensating or mitigating control to your access controls, but more looking at it from a financial as well as a configuration transactional perspective. So a good example is an organization may have only certain individuals or few individuals in one business unit. You allow those users to have excess access in order to perform their jobs. But as a compensating or mitigating control, now you want to apply an advanced financial controls to see exactly what they're doing with that access, whether it's setups around master data, who created a supplier or changed or modified a supplier, who modified a bank account, GL account setups, who is able to open and close accounting periods, and so forth. And then finally, the third or the top of this pyramid has to do with financial reporting compliance, or FRC, where now you're able to house, you're able to perform your assessments on your key controls, your risk, your processes, and so forth, and give that visibility for the reporting to management, external auditors, internal auditors, based on what those key controls may be. So those could be your SOX controls, controls pertaining to your GDPR, ITGCs, and so forth. So why are controls even needed? Why would an organization approach us as an implementer and try for us to convince them as to why controls are needed? Well, as mentioned before, right now a growing body of regulations and standards require deep, continual, automated monitoring of crucial access policies of users to satisfy your regulatory compliances around SOX, GDPR, ITGCs, JSOX, and so forth. Auditors are increasingly obliged to assess the validity of users' fine-grained access. So if you've ever pictured an Oracle Cloud job role, you know that job role can be made up of multiple duty roles. And within those duty roles, those can be made up of multiple privileges. So what AAC, or Advanced Access Controls, does is it goes out there and looks at it at the most granular level of the privilege to ensure that a user has the appropriate access in order while still performing their jobs and not violating any risk or any policies of that organization. Unfortunately, complying with access policies nowadays, and we see this a lot as well, using manual methods quickly becomes unwieldy and unreliable. Spreadsheets, third-party applications that don't really address the SOD. They may address user provisioning from the role perspective, but looking at it again at the most granular level of the privilege is really where you want to be performing your SOD analysis. Okay, and then how do we ensure effective risk management is in place? So you walk into a customer, how do you work with the right folks to ensure that the right people have the right access? Financial risk controls and compliances are met depending on your regulatory compliance. Correct policies and procedures have been implemented and or updated to now include that automation from this tool. Effective management of continuous change in risk and compliance regulations are met. And more importantly, that timely reporting is now available. Seamless dashboards and robust exception management is available for all levels of your organization. So whether you are the business process owner or the CFO or the CEO of the company, depending on your flavor of visibility, you would have that dashboard available to you so that you have that risk awareness present throughout the organization. Okay, so let's jump in first into financial reporting compliance, or FRC again for short, where we look at the end-to-end best practice process, really simplifying it into 4 main components here. Where number 1, we're looking at managing risk and controls, right? This is all keeping your risk and control matrix up to date and complete. So when we walk into a customer, 99% of the time, they may already have an existing risk and control matrix, either an Excel spreadsheet or from a third-party application, where financial reporting compliance really can operate. It's not specific to Fusion Cloud. You don't have to have Fusion Financials implemented in order to use this, because all you're doing is you're taking your existing risk and control matrix and now just uploading it via the upload templates that are provided into FRC itself. For now, you're able to now perform your control effectiveness, assess your control effectiveness, perform your assessments periodically, either monthly, quarterly, annually, and so forth. You're able to now view effectiveness documentation in real time and keep those control designs and assessment plans up to date. You're then able to address those issues by reviewing and remediating issues identified by assessments, and allows you to reassess to verify those effectiveness and ongoing. And then finally, and most importantly, you're now able to easily publish that certification. So you're able to use either the standard reports based on those assessments. You're able to now leverage the OTBI, Oracle Transaction Intelligence business, from the system itself to provide you those reports that are customized and tailored for that specific organization. Okay, so in a nutshell, Oracle Financial Reporting Compliance services that streamlines internal control assessments are met, automates your labor-intensive tasks required to complete external certifications, for the most part your SOX, but it can also be applied to GDPR, ITGCs, and other regulatory compliances to make sure that your organization is adhering to those, right? So with financial reporting compliance, organizations really get 3 benefits, okay? Number 1, they can now digitize their internal processes needed to certify financial results. Second, they can make collaboration with external auditors, and for that matter, anyone really involved with the process. So you could you could include your internal auditors, your business process owners, your executives, anyone who has that level of visibility into FRC now has that collaboration that's taking place. And third and finally, they can quickly, within a matter of weeks, really upgrade their processes with best practices. Okay. So stakeholders like your external auditors, for example, can use Risk Management Cloud altogether to review the controls matrix. Okay. Number two, they can select controls that need maybe a deeper review and assessment. They can now complete their design and operating effectiveness on those assessments, review the work already that may be done by the internal auditors, and then follow up on any issues that may exist. So these are all what I would consider your return on investments when allowing your external auditors to have this level of visibility into something like FRC, where they can now perform these tasks without having to make those requests with your users or being on site for these types of information. Okay. And as mentioned, FRC really can handle any of your regulatory compliances, including, these are just some examples. So for example, like your SOX, Canadian CSOX, your JSOX, OMB, A123, model audit rules, and so forth. Okay, so let's take a look at it from a swim lane perspective of, who are the users that typically use FRC, and what sort of role do they play that we typically see. So this would be considered our standard approach to who are all the users that may be involved and what they do. So you would need an administrator to set up financial reporting compliance, obviously, right? But you'd also need participation from your internal auditors as well as process owners to really gather the configuration data. They would be also responsible for reviewing and approving risk and controls, assessing the objects, reassessing risk and controls, having some part in the create and addressing issues as part of that assessments, and then finally reviewing the assessment results reports and publishing those reports, certifying those results. Whereas now you also have a business analyst who is really responsible for adding risk and controls. Okay, that could be done on a periodic basis as requirements change. They're also involved with creating and initiating the assessments, and then also involved with creating and addressing the issues as part of those assessments as well. So these would be the typical end users, I would say, that, from a standard approach, who you would see involved with this process from the end to end. Okay, but as mentioned, it doesn't stop there, right? So when it comes to visibility, depending on the flavor and what sort of level of viewership that user may need, for example, within your internal users, you may have your line of business executives, your risk managers, and your control owners who may have certain views into not only financial reporting compliance, but the other applications as well. And then also from your external users, you may include your vendors, your external audit, outside legal counsel, and so forth, to have some level, maybe view-only type access to the application, so that they can readily run their reports, view certain reports, get the information that they need in order to have that quicker turnaround as part of their business day-to-day process. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about access controls, or advanced access controls, or AAC for short, which is if you guys remember the pyramid, it was the bottommost layer, or normally considered your first line of defense when it comes to building controls around your risk and so forth. The idea behind that is, if they can't access a certain field or a certain page, then that's probably your strongest area of controls. And when guarding against risk, against fraudulent activities, and so forth. So controls, access controls are needed primarily only to the ability to fine tune and track Oracle, either your ERP, HCM, SCM cloud users access, again, at the most granular privilege level, ensuring corporate security. Okay, users can have conflicting and even toxic access privileges due to multiplicity of possible access points and navigation pathways. So, we look at this in really two ways. What can the job role perform? Are there any toxic violations within the job role itself? And then finally, if we assign that job role to a user in combination with other job roles, what then SOD conflicts are introduced as part of that risk, overall risk, right? Where a role may be clean, but now because a user may have multiple job roles, what sort of new risk does that inherit into that spectrum. Okay, so you heard me talk a lot about SODs, segregation of duties, separation of duties, and so forth. We'll call it SODs for short. When we build an SOD policy, what we call a model or a control in AAC, Advanced Access Controls, we look at the example here of we have two entitlements, right? The first entitlement there on your left is we're going to create one that's called create suppliers. And we're going to assign all of the access points or privileges that map to a role to track it from a risk perspective. So we're saying the ones that are important to us to track for create suppliers would include create payables payment, edit payables payment, manage payables payment, and so forth, all of those access points. But then we also want to include a second one called create suppliers. This entitlement includes those access points or privileges to create a supplier, edit a supplier registration bank account, edit a supplier registration request, import supplier, maintain supplier, and so forth. So what we're saying is that when the system goes out there and looks at every single job role, every single user who have these combinations of access points to create a supplier and create a payment, then we have an SOD conflict. Okay. And when we get that conflict, now we're really looking at it in two different ways. The first way, from an implementation perspective, is you want to look at it from an intra-role violation. These are violations within the roles themselves. Okay, so in this example, we have this user, Casey Ian, who has the accounts payable specialist job role, who carries, in that job role, carries the duty roles of AP specialist custom, accounts payable specialist, payables invoice creation, but they also carry the privilege of create payables invoice privilege, okay? That same job role, the accounts payable specialist, also has the supplier master duty role, which carries the create supplier privilege. So this role in itself is an intra-role conflict because it's a conflict that exists within the accounts payable specialist role. Well, let's say now we remove that create supplier privilege and the role is clean. Well, this user, Casey Ian, would still be in violation of an SOD because they also have the supplier administrator role, which now carries the import supplier privilege, which now allows them to both create a supplier or import a supplier and create a payment, or in this case, create payables invoice. So they would still be in violation. So those are the two ways we would look at this, both from an intra-role as well as from an inter-role conflict. Okay. From an implementation perspective, the way you typically want to approach this is always try to clean up the roles first, your intra-role conflicts, because if you think about it, if you're cleaning up your roles, you're somewhat cleaning up a lot of the inter-role conflicts at the same time, meaning the roles that are assigned to the user. So you're really knocking out two birds with one stone. And then the second part to that is that if you're implementing AAC or advanced access controls, you're more than likely going to be working in a dev environment or a test environment, a lower environment. So, which means that you may have a lot of test users, you may have a lot of users with the super user type roles, the seeded roles that carries a lot of the violations inherently. So you don't want to focus too much on your users just yet, but rather you want to focus on the roles themselves, so that by the time you guys or the customer now gets to, let's say, UAT, where that environment is now being configured to replicate what it's going to look like in production, now your focus can turn more towards the users at that point. Okay. Unfortunately, what we're seeing at most customers when we first walk in is that they're performing a lot of their SOD analysis via these spreadsheets, where you know, as you can tell, there's a lot of information in here. It can be pretty daunting just to maintain this either from a month-to-month basis or even a quarterly basis, where a lot can happen in between that period of time, right? So imagine trying to do this for 100,000 users with multiple roles and so forth, trying to keep track of this. And again, this may be appropriate when it comes to user provisioning because you're really looking at it at the job role level, but you're not looking at it at the most granular level of that role, which in this case would be the privilege. So it's not a true SOD analysis, in my opinion. Again, it may be fine for user provisioning, but certainly not appropriate when it comes to SOD analysis. And while Fusion ERP does come with standard auditing reports such as list of users and provision roles, list of users and provision function and data accesses, list of inactive users and so forth, it's not really a robust listing of reports, and that's just what they are, right? They're just reports where it's not a true analysis around SOD, sensitive access, transactional, and so forth. And while there are standard controls available in Fusion Cloud to monitor for user roles, approval hierarchies, three-way matching, tracking payments, tracking discounts, and so forth, if you look over there to the right with advanced controls, AAC, AFC, and FRC, you're now getting a very much more robust set of controls where you can now monitor for split purchase orders, duplicate payments, transaction thresholds, using fuzzy logic on duplicate vendors, for example. So if it's even if it's an 80% match in the vendor name, it'll still flag it as a potential duplicate because it's using that fuzzy logic. Transactional pattern analysis, configuration snapshots, changes to supplier bank accounts over the weekend, for example, changes to geo accounts, changes to rules around opening and closing accounting periods, and so forth. These can all now be monitored using advanced controls, which a lot of our customers find very handy, which is where we go in and we first understand what their business is, review their process flows and so forth, and try to get this information readily available for them to start taking advantage of. Okay. And then finally, with AAC, Advanced Access Controls, you're also now able to certify user access, identify roles to certify. You'd review those users with roles, certify those users access roles, really enabling you to meet those SOX certification requirements. This is a big one nowadays around SOX, where as a part of your internal controls, before, when SOX was first introduced, folks were sending out email blasts to their various business process owners with, okay, here are all of your roles, here are all of your responsibilities in the on-prem world, here are all the users that are assigned to those roles or responsibilities. Do they actually need them? Yes or no? So and that can become a daunting task when you're tracking, who submitted their certifications. All those surveys, which ones you're still waiting on, when is the due date, and so forth. Whereas now with advanced access controls, using this is really a simple workflow to certify users that have those accesses to sensitive functions. This will replace the spreadsheets that are currently used in emails-based compliance tasks, where you're now able to scope sensitive ERP roles and users for approval by process owners, and more importantly, remove or approve or investigate users with high risk access. Okay. And then from a reporting perspective, one of the newer reports that are now available as I'd consider standard is around SOD compliance report, where you're now able to view all of the controls that you may have in place. So for example, create customer and enter AR invoices. You're able to view when it was last run, the number of users that are impacted, any pending incidents, role details, and so forth. And it also allows you to drill down on those numbers to get a more detailed view of where those SOD conflicts may exist. Okay. And then, of course, via OTBI or Oracle Transactional Business Intelligence, you're now able to produce these dashboard or these graphical views, so that now your CFO, your line of business, your CROs, your CISOs, managers, auditors, everyone at every single level of your organization has the potential to view it depending on their flavor of what they're interested in viewing, so that now you're able to customize those OTBI reports to provide that information to them in a timely fashion. We didn't talk too much about advanced financial controls. And if you guys remember from the pyramid, it's really that that middle layer there, your second line of defense, where you're now able to monitor transactional as well as configuration type anomalies within cloud, financials cloud. And it could also act as a compensating or mitigating controls for your access controls, right? Whereas now you're able to monitor for duplicate suppliers. You're able to review unauthorized changes to supplier information, check for duplicate POs, check for split POs, and so forth. So there are many different combinations of the logic that could be either included, that are included with the seeded content, or can be created depending on the requirements from your business process owners that are able to be now configured in advanced financial controls. Again, leading into the reporting, the OTBI reporting, so that users now have that visibility into what's going on there. From a continuous monitoring for configuration changes, if you get it, for you guys, for those of you who may have been involved with the on-prem GRC world, if you remember PCG, Preventive Controls Governor, this is really a spin-off of that, if you want to put it that way, right? Where now you're able to detect for configuration type changes, detect business risk, breaches by continuously monitoring ERP master data setups, for example, automate risk-based tracking of 250 plus setups across your account payables, AR, GL, procurement areas, and so forth. So this is a good example, your third one down there, where you're able to now get alerts for frequent changes made to supplier bank accounts, payment methods, item master, accounting periods, and much, much more. So we have a library that is continuing to grow with each new release of not only the seeded content around AAC, but also AFC as well, where we now have it for ERP, the ones that cover finance, the ones that cover SCM, your supply chain management, and the ones that cover your HCM areas as well. Okay, so I came up with this list, and I thought it was important to share because what we're seeing as part of our trend, you know, what I would consider our top 10 configuration controls out there, you know, we see controls or requests or requirements for, you know, monitoring for period, you know, changes to your period ledgers. The changes could necessitate an accounting audit, and if significant changes occurred after you reported financial results. So how about journal entries or accounting rules? We see a lot of requests for that as well. Have suppliers' information change unexpectedly. So anything that has to do really with supplier master data, those seem to be at the top of the list wherever we go. And also including, you know, supply chain item masters, were contract lines altered? Did site or user profile options change? How about data roles and security profiles? Flex field cross-validation rules, we see that a lot as well. Receiving parameters unexpectedly changed. So this really monitors for those changes, the who, what, when, and where, allowing you to now investigate as to why that change made. Was it appropriate? Did someone approve it? Or was it, you know, more of an intent or an error, and so forth? Okay, and how all three of these applications kind of talk to each other is that you can relate the records. So I'll use the example of, you know, if you perform your SOD analysis using AAC, or, you know, you're monitoring for your transaction or configuration changes, that could be a part of your testing, right? If you're going through your assessment and you're performing your testing, now how do you capture all of those results? Well, you now map those to a specific control or a risk on the FRC side. So this could be a SOX control, GDPR, and so forth, that you're now mapping those results into those controls and capturing those and housing those in FRC, allowing a user to now perform as part of their assessments. Okay. How do we go about implementing this as well? What are the key configuration questions that you must ask, you must find out as part of your implementation? So I would consider these to be the top 4. Whereas part of your requirements gathering, as part of your discovery, you know, you're asking these questions around: have you identified how many business processes you need to document? Okay. Have you decided how many risk and controls need to be defined for those processes, and where are those pulling from? Are those part of your SOX controls? Are those part of your GDPR, ITGCs, and so forth? How often do you typically perform your risk analysis and evaluate those? And then how often do you perform control assessments? So these would be your 4 key questions I would consider when as drivers for your risk management implementation, again, as part of maybe your discovery or your requirements gathering and so forth that you would want to find out from a customer. And then as part of the actual implementation itself, if you're performing or analyzing SOD analysis out of AAC, or transactional or configuration type anomalies out of AFC, Advanced Financial Controls, the first thing you typically want to do is make sure that the data that you're reviewing is current, that closely resembles what you did in production. So this would include performing a P2T refresh. Okay, where now in your test or dev environment, you're configuring, fine-tuning AAC and AFC models, minimizing your false positives. You're going through a whole host of processes to ensure that your models in the AAC and AFC are what the business requires. It's what they need. It makes sense. It's relevant, and it meets and it satisfies those risk pain points that you've identified as part of your requirements gathering and discovery. You then identify which of the AAC and AFC models would pertain based on that assessment. So this assessment, again, could be a review of the current business process flows with the business process owners. It could be as a result of reviewing prior audit results, either from the external auditors or the internal auditors. It could be some sort of a risk assessment that was maybe previously performed that you could leverage to better help you better understand, what AAC or AFC models could pertain. What more models could we focus? Is it more focusing more on the P2P areas, the the O to C ones, IT, your different areas that you may want to focus those models on. So that review process is very important. Again, a lot of customers, when we go in, they always ask the questions of, well, why can't we just turn everything on? Well, number one, there are 120 plus seeded models available in the content of in the library content right now. So while a big bang approach is not, the best idea based on best practices approach, what we've seen in other customers, you always want to look at it from a risk perspective, because while it may be nice to just turn everything on, it just means that there's a lot more data to comb through, data that may not even be considered relevant to your organization. So you always want, I always encourage customers to look at it starting with what you would consider a high risk. Start from there, your top 10 or your top 15, and add more as you go along to get that flavor of AAC and AFC models around that. Plan your responses to incidents accordingly. So this would involve your business process owners, because they don't, nobody knows their areas better than the business process owners. So the responses to incidents may include removing access from a user, modifying the role, accepting the risk while implementing AFC as a compensating or mitigating control, and so forth. And then if desired, revise your AAC and AFC control. So this is very iterative process in itself, where you're back and forth. You get your requirements, you run the results, you identify any false positives, you tweak the logic itself, you go back and you rerun it and so forth and review it. And then finally, export those desired AAC and AFC into now what we call controls. Controls really are where now you're capturing how you can actually remediate those incidents. The reporting is also now involved as a control. The workflow, the approval workflow on who's going to be looking at the results, who's going to be approving it, who's going to be publishing the results, certifying, and so forth. And then once you may head over now from your test and dev environment into your production environment, you make sure that it's, making security configuration changes planned in step 2. So you're bringing over everything via an export import from your test dev environment now into your production with your controls. You're now able to respond to those incidents and so forth. So really after go live, there are really key steps that must be done, where you start with configuring your custom roles and your user role, job roles, assignments, and so forth. You're importing and finalized access models. This is an example for AAC. You're then deploying those into a control, running those control analysis periodically. Did the analysis find any incidents? If yes, are access conflicts expected? If no, remediate those incidents. If yes, accept the incidents and monitor using AFC for transactions using a compensating AFC control. And you do this periodic throughout the process. So this is, really after go live of how the standard way of how a customer goes through the process end to end. Okay, so to spell it out, first, from a remediation perspective, you would accept the incidents that cannot be acted on. Okay, next you would act on residual intra-role and then inter-role violations. Remember the intra-role violations within the roles themselves, and then the inter-role violations now at the user level. Okay, you take away access from users with conflicts that either they pose a high risk enough where you need to remove that access, or they really don't need that access to perform their jobs. So if they do need that access to perform their jobs, you then consider using compensating controls such as AFC, maybe an approval process outside of Oracle, and so forth. Option 4, you would redesign the roles in Fusion security if needed. So you start off with your role, you redesign it, you test it out, you run it through your change management process and so forth, in order to eliminate all of those SOD conflicts posing any high level risk within your organization and simplifying that whole reporting process. Okay, and then finally, you're now able to facilitate risk awareness throughout your organizations from top to bottom. Either involving the control owners, process owners, auditors, executives, all levels of your organizations will have some level of visibility into those reports, and depending on what their flavor is, again, those could be tailored to meet their needs. And with that, I will open it up, I guess, for questions, either in the chat room, or if you guys want to come online and ask questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Yeah, any questions? Do we see any questions on the panel?
Yes, actually, there's 2 questions that came in here. So first question is, how are roles and responsibilities assigned to the users?
Oh,
okay, perfect. Go ahead, Patrick.
So I'll start off, and you can jump into Rahul as well. But
yeah.
So a job role, it's a little different than the responsibility from the on-prem world, whereas now you're using the role-based access approach, where a job role may consist of multiple duty roles, which are equivalent to the functions or the pages within the responsibility. And then each of those duty roles may comprise of what we call privileges, which is equivalent to the functions within the responsibilities in the on-prem world. So a job role is the only level that can be assigned to a user. A duty role or the privilege cannot be assigned directly to a user. Those roll up into the job role, whereas now the job role is what is assigned to the user. That answers your question.
Thank you for that, Patrick. And there's another question here. Are the controls provided out of the box based on industry best practices, or we have to design the controls?
Nope, it's the seated controls that are available in the library are available off of best practices, off of what customers have frequently used in the past. It's more a collaboration of with Oracle, with a lot of the accounting firms, PwC, E&Y, and so forth, having some input into what controls should be available as far as ones that we frequently see out there. So each year, or each release, I should say, that list grows. They continually add, they improve on that listing so that it sort of takes that guesswork out of from the client, right? Where they don't really have to go in now and create anything from scratch. They can just leverage that library, use the controls that are available to them, or even take those and tweak it so that they can quickly get to whatever their requirement is and move on from there.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, and then as Patrick said, right, so Oracle comes out with this new new controls with the future releases. But let's say if something doesn't work for a customer, they can take that existing control with Oracle provided, and they can tweak it to their requirements. So they can remove some conditions, or they can add in more conditions, and make it effective for their organization. So they don't need to build anything from scratch. They can reuse or repurpose what has already been delivered.
Yep, that's a good point, Rahul. And you know, just because a new control may be introduced with a new release, right? It doesn't mean that the customer has to use it. They do have the option. In fact, they'll know even before the release is made, or even that is added to the new release through the to the release notes. They'll find out all the information of what's going to be available in the next release, whether they want to take advantage of it or not. It's simply just turning it on or just leaving it as part of the library. So they do have that option. Yep.
Thanks, Patrick. Yep. Merida, are there any other questions?
No, I don't see any more questions coming in here. But I want to thank you, Rahul and Patrick, for delivering such a very informative and helpful learning session today for our audience. And we will have the recording available to our audience. If you need to get a copy of that, you can reach out to us directly, or you can look in our event site over at nexinfo.com. Well, I'd like to close our webinar today. And again, this is our contact information. Please feel free to reach out if there's any other question, or if you need a copy of our webinar, or if you just want to dive deep further into the risk management cloud. Again, thank you everybody for joining today's session, and have a fantastic week. Thank you everyone, and bye now.